Hey everybody, before we get going, I just need to give a big thank you to Sinnis Motorcycles for lending me these machines to bring you some videos and an honest review, and also a massive thanks to Bikesure for supplying cover to me while I've got these bikes and allowing me to bring the videos to you. Bikesure look to cover individuals, so it doesn't matter if your bike is completely normal or totally crazy, they will be able to supply cover for you. There is a link in the description below where you can get in contact with them. Thank you very much to them for supplying the cover, as I say, and let's get on with the video. Hope you're all doing good out there, and welcome to my review of the Sinnis SM-R 125cc. So I am producing a video for each one of these bikes, although the first beginning section of it is actually going to be the same, because the truth of it is these two bikes are identical apart from the wheels, to the point that you can, and I have checked this with Sinnis, you can directly switch the wheels backwards and forwards. So, should you wish to go for a Supermoto, you could put the Enduro wheels on it, or if you go for an Enduro, you could put the Supermoto wheels on it. If you've been watching videos on my channel over the past week or so, you will have seen that I've taken these out independently on their first rides. I've taken both of them green laning, and I've taken them both to the country roads to really try them in all the different areas that I can. And I've come to a very good conclusion on the bike as a whole and the differences between the two. Okay, well, let's look at the common things between them. I'll give you a bit of a closer look of them, show you the controls, and then we'll head out on the road. And obviously, depending on which video you click, depends on which bike I'll be on at the time. So, things these bikes have in common. Both of them cost around £3,500. Yes, that is a lot more than Chinese bikes used to be, but then the Japanese equivalents are also, you know, nearer to £5 these days. I do think you get a lot more bike for your £3,500 compared to, say, for instance, when I got my first Pulse Adrenaline 15 years ago, which was admittedly £1,400. That thing was awful in comparison, truly awful in comparison. Not bad on its own for the price, but compared to these, it's a different world. I'm so proud to see how far these bikes have come. And yeah, the price has gone up with it, but it's still a little lower than the competitors. Also great to see that they're using a Hoesung licensed engine. It's stamped and everything. It's reportedly 14.8 brake horsepower. It isn't the most torquey engine in the world, and it doesn't feel like the fastest engine in the world because, I mean, top speed, as you've seen, 65 miles an hour out of both of these, basically. My old bike in the old days would do 75. Yes, Euro 5's come along, which has really constrained these bikes. But the thing is, compared to other bikes of the same lineage, you know, Euro 5, this is what's happened to the engines. They've had to make them so efficient to pass through the Euro 5, it's actually sort of robbed them of their power. They've still got the power, but it delivers it in a different way. It's more sort of over time and much higher in the revs that you get your peak power. Performance isn't awful by any means. It's great for, you know, any 17-year-old's going to be quite happy with that sort of performance, or even just getting around town. I have a blast on these. Maybe I need to ride my old 125 again to realise it wasn't as fast as I thought it was. Which is something I've said myself in the past to people. And behind that engine is what appears to be a stainless steel exhaust on both of them, which has got a nice big open end on it, but on the inside of it, it's actually got a little tube, which restricts it a lot. It's very quiet at this bike from this end can. I would change that immediately, and I'd also like to see if I could free up some air intake, because these bikes sound like nothing but induction when you're riding them around. Great little soundtrack to ride to, but it is all induction sound. As I say, this has got a non-removable baffle, so you're going to have to change that end can to do that. I mean, yeah, you're going to have to do it that way. I did notice that the pipes on these, the mid pipes, are getting very coloured. Is it the same on both? Yeah, it is. Very blue and purple throughout. I thought at first maybe they were running a bit lean. I think it actually is just the restrictiveness of these exhaust pipes. It's just getting that heat up inside. These bikes are actually quite tall for 125s. I'm 6'4", and I do think that the XE feels like it's a little higher. I mean, I can do a comparison here, but we're not on flat ground. Oh, it's pretty close, actually. There's not a lot in it. That feels like it's slightly higher up, which would make sense because, you know, it's on a 21-inch front wheel and a 18 rear wheel opposed to 217. So in theory, it has to be higher. And I'll just show you on this bike here. As I say, I'm 6'4". I'm sat on it flat-footed fine, but my leg is straight. And to be honest with you, well, that makes this basically the same height as my DRZ 400 SM, which has been raised. So as I say, they are quite tall. Now you do actually have to be careful with something with these bikes to do with the tallness and the side stand. This bike actually fell over on me. Not with me on it, when I was away from it. I was at a petrol station and the floor wasn't completely flat. When I filled the bike up, that put lots of weight up the top and the steering was turned, I think it was like this way. When I came back to the bike, it had fallen over, and I actually asked them to check the CCTV because I couldn't believe that it had just fallen over on its own. And sure enough, it had. The side stand on these is a little bit too long in my opinion. It should be maybe an inch shorter. So if you buy one of these, you really need to be aware of that fact. So just try and, you know, if you're going to park it so it leans a little bit into the stand, so the floor's a bit tilted that way. It isn't as pronounced on the XE, and I think that's the issue. They made the length for the XE with the bigger wheels and then put it on the SM. Small issue, can be corrected. I mean, if it was me, I'd just chop the side stand, sleeve it and weld it myself, but then that's because I can weld, and obviously most people can't. But that is a good test of drop damage on this bike. It's probably not something I wanted to do, but thanks for Sinnis for being so understanding about it. Okay, so broken brake lever. They've sent me a new one out to replace that. The end of the grip got a little bit, you know, scuffed up. There is a little scratch on the underside of the foot peg and a little dink in the brake lever where the foot peg went into the brake lever. There is a little scuff on the pillion peg. And that's practically it. And this took a hard fall with a full tank, bang, into concrete, well, brick. So I'm actually very impressed by that. Nothing's rattling, nothing's snapped. Not bad build at all. As I say, it's not the test I wanted to do. Continuing on with some other impressive features of these bikes at the price level is they're water cooled, which means when you go green laning, whereas in my old days with air cooled engines, being sat still, you know, trugging up a hill, that bike got hotter and hotter and hotter. This thing just turns its fan on, not a problem. Absolutely fantastic to see that, and that should also make engines last longer because they get cooled better and they don't get the same damage. Your oils not being overheated, etc, etc. It's just better for an engine to run cooler. So it's great to see that. And also, another very impressive thing is these both have independent ABS and not linked brakes. That is fantastic. As I say, when I spoke to Sinnis when I got these bikes, with this bike their aim was to give, you know, the 17, 18-year-old new rider everything they want in a bike like this. They want full power, they want a reliable engine, they want to have ABS rather than linked brakes, stuff like that. And they've delivered on that very well for the price. The build quality and the materials used on these is actually really good now. I mean, they are solid sounding bikes. There's no rattle from anything. I mean, the seat's got a tiny bit of movement. Solid. I mean, the plastic guard flexes a bit if you hit it, but you know, these are decently solid bikes. Nothing on it looks too cheap. I recognise a few parts, like the brake lever. I think that's exactly the same as it was on the Pulse Adrenaline many years ago. And for that reason, it means your clutch lever is a little bit floppy. You get that with lots of bikes, but I do wish that that's something they'd put a little bit more effort into, is to upgrade the controls, because the controls are the thing that you touch. Talking of which, the bars. I'd actually prefer these bars to be slightly wider. But then, as I say, I'm 6'4", I'm quite wide, so for me they feel a little bit in, and I'm used to riding Supermoto with big Renthals, but they do have a fat bar on them as standard, so you can just go and buy a set of Renthals, you know, get some decent grips, maybe change the levers, you can change a few bits and pieces and really make this bike your own. As I would absolutely love to take one of these and have a budget and just upgrade it, you know, as I say, bars, levers, grips, exhaust, have a play with the intake, and also maybe experiment with the gearing. That's something that is common between the two of them, as is performance. As I say, top speed's about 65 miles an hour. The gearing on these is a little odd. It's perfectly fine when you get used to it, but like first gear is, and I've shown this in previous videos, so if you want more details on this, please do go and watch those. The idea of my videos is you have the review, which is like the conclusion of everything, but if you'd like to go and watch what I'm talking about, you go to the previous videos. So yeah, anyway, as I'm saying, the gearbox is slightly unusual in the sense that first gear is very short, 15 to 20 miles an hour, bouncing off the rev limiter. Second is a little longer, third is a little longer. Fourth, fifth and sixth, quite close together. Like sixth gear and doing 30, 40 miles an hour and it's just pooting along, it's fine. But you go down a couple of gears and it's not screaming its head off. I feel like this bike has got more potential in there if you adjust that gearing. These can both run on E5 and E10, and I have actually run them on E10 and on E5. And I can't say that I noticed a huge difference between the two fuels in the sense of power or how the bike wanted to run. The seat could do with being just a little bit wider. It's more that bench style seat that made both of the bikes feel like you're very much on top of them. Like you feel like you're like this, like on a tricycle. Even on my DRZ SM, I feel like I'm more in it. So when you go through the corners, you're more sort of like within the bike. These you very much feel like you're perched on top of them, and that's one of the things I didn't like about the Husqvarna 701. I've got more used to it and it doesn't seem to affect my riding style like it did before, which is quite good, which shows maybe the Husky 701 needs another try. But I will say that the SM felt a little bit tail high and the suspension is really tough. But the thing is, this suspension has not been adjusted for me. I think I'd probably want to take a couple of winds off the preload on this one to soften up that rear end a little bit. There is also something I've talked about which is common between the two of them, but I'll talk more about on the road because it's to do with the handling, is the fact that both of them feel quite raked out with how far out the forks come. That does affect the handling and it is different on two. So now we're getting to the point where I'm starting to talk about the differences. So let's quickly show you the controls of the bikes, maybe give you a quick close-up of a few bits, and then we'll get out on the road and these videos will split off into their own things. Okay, let's start over here with the mirrors. The mirrors aren't bad. They do vibrate around quite a bit because they're so light, but they're actually better than the original Pulse ones, so, you know, fair play. They actually do work. You can see people coming in them. The grips themselves are very much exactly the same grips that came on my bike 15 years ago. It would be nice to see these updated to something a little bit more soft, but again, that's pretty much like all stock grips come. They're these hard, long-wearing things. Clutch lever, as I showed you, there's a little bit of play in that I'm not the biggest fan of, but I've seen it on bigger brands as well and bigger CC bikes. Pass light, high beam, low beam, indicators here, push to cancel. I will say that this is quite sticky on one of these bikes, but that seems to have sorted itself out. These were basically brand new when I was given them. Horn, very loud. Okay, we'll have a look at the display here. We've got the fuel gauge on this side with bars. Yes, it's got a fuel gauge, another big selling point that they didn't have in the past. Speed is in the middle, revs go across the top. Time, you got what gear you're in, 0 represents neutral. There is a couple of mode buttons, so you can see trip and average. Average what? Is that average speed? Lap times? This has lap times? I didn't know all that. That has to be average speed, I'm guessing. Sorry, didn't know that. And obviously, as I say, the controls are absolutely identical on the XE. Show you the start up. You also have lights on the outside, such as your neutral light here, your indicator light here, and then you've got an engine warning light and an ABS warning light. The ABS warning light is on this one because the fuse is still not in it because I was using it off-road. Yes, you can disable the ABS on this by removing a fuse. Don't do that unless you know what you're doing, and you're only really going to want to be doing that off-road. I'll just show you the exhaust if I can. You see it's a very small tube within there. That's not removable, unfortunately. There you go, there is that stamped engine. Give you a bit of a close-up. This is the injection system. It is still cable driven. This is what I mean about the exhaust. It is many colours all the way down to about here. So it seems to be quite hot. So I'll give you a little look over. The brake calipers look the same ones that have always... Hold on. Should we compare the caliper to one from 15 years ago? Yes, I still have this. I don't know why. So the old caliper looked like this. It's the same caliper 15 years on. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Continuing on our closer look, because people always want to know, as you can see, this all looks good. Nice bolts. What are they made of? 71S. Is that stainless? Kind of looks stainlessy, but it also looks coated. Welds, you know, they don't look bad. I've seen some much worse welds on some large name, large CC bikes, and I'm not kidding. Let's do a comparison between the two bikes. So we've got that weld there, and that weld there, and that's there, and there. It's not bad. Why is the exhaust being tack welded on? Okay, not a problem, you're just going to have to grind that to get this exhaust off, but yeah, the exhaust is tack welded on. Tyres on the SM are nylons, and obviously on 17-inch rims, and the XE's obviously got its 21-inch, 18-inch setup, and I'll talk more about those wheels and tyres, as I say, in the on-road part. Right, we'll get out on the road in just a second, but my conclusion on sort of both of these bikes as a whole is I'm really impressed. Yes, the price has been increased quite a bit, and I was concerned I wouldn't see much in return for that, but having a close look at them, using these bikes, they've delivered on that price. I think anyone who spends that on these won't be disappointed. Also, when you buy these bikes, you get a warranty. You get 1 year's labour warranty, 2 years parts warranty, and a year of roadside assistance. So if you do break down in the first year, they're going to pick you up. They'll pay for the parts and the labour to fix the bike. New things tend to show their problems within the first year, few months even. So once you get past that first year, you're normally into the like you know, if it was going to break, it would have broken by now. Anyway, I'm going to get out on the road now and show you the SM and the XE as individual bikes that they are. But yeah, if I was getting a new bike now, or if it was when I was getting my first 125, I would have been over the moon with this thing, without doubt. Or this one, depending on what you're doing. But that's what we need to talk about next. Okay, well now it's time to talk about the bike as an individual, and of course this one is about the SM-R. The SM-R rides very differently to the XE. Even though the only difference is the wheels, it does make a big difference. Performance and all of that, not so different, but handling. If you want to see me ride these bikes harder, then do check out the first ride where I do a top speed run. There's also the green laning video, which is a mixture of green lanes and also country roads. And there's also the country road video itself, which is just national speed limits. And you can see the true, you know, flat out performance of this thing and the handling. But that's the thing I want to talk about, the handling. As I mentioned before, this bike has got quite a raked out feel, more so than a Supermoto, in my experience, normally has. This basically means that the forks feel like they're pitched outwards slightly, which makes the steering a little bit more wanting to stay dead ahead. You don't get the exact same flicky feel that I'm used to on a Supermoto. But it's not bad, the handling is good on this thing, and it's definitely better on this than it is on the XE on the road. Those 21-inch rims aren't the problem, I think the tyres are. I'm not the biggest fan of the tyres that comes on the XE. I think it would probably do much better on something like some Pirelli Scorpions, which I've used in the past, which on the same wheel setup proved to be fantastic. So I think it is just the tyres that's the issue. However, there is also the fact that that wheel is that much bigger, and for the road, a 17 is much better. And if you're going to ride on the road most of the time, or if you're never going to go off-road, get the Supermoto. And I think most people will get the Supermoto because that's what most is going to use it for. Don't get a bike dedicated or aimed to be used off-road if you're never going to do it. It won't make it as good for you on the road. However, as I've mentioned, you can't really lose in this game, because if you buy either of them, you could just buy the opposite wheels and bingo, you've got both basically. I have suggested to Sinnis that maybe they could do a package or something where they could, you know, sell the wheels, tyres, discs and everything together. But I'm sure they're all available individually if you so chose to go down that route. So that gives you the answer as to which one I would pick. I would pick the SM. If someone said to me, you have to have one of these, I'd say, give me the SM. If I didn't have other bikes, to be clear. If I did have my DR Supermoto still, then I'd definitely say the Enduro. This is what I was talking about with the gearing earlier. I'm in 6th gear and I'm doing 30 miles an hour at 4 and a bit thousand RPM. If I drop 2 gears, I'm still doing 30 miles an hour. I'm only just doing under 6,000 RPM. So, is it that the further on gears are actually quite short but close together? It's both a combination of the gear length and the steps between them. You see, absolutely flat out full throttle. It gets up to speed, but it doesn't really pull you, but it gets there. It's not slow by any means. Don't get me wrong though. I don't want people to think that this bike is slow, and I don't want people to think that the gearbox is rubbish. It's not. Ride it and see what you think of it. It's just different, and I'm sure it is mostly to do with Euro 5. I think it's also to do with the fact that they have to increase the stroke length to get more burn out of the fuel to make it burn better, and thus make it more efficient. Now, a clear road behind me, so let's show you how these brakes do. This is with the ABS on, by the way. That is not bad. I could probably actually do it better than that if I don't use the gears, but I have a habit of doing it on bikes like this for extra braking force. Let me try and do that again with just the brakes. Make sure we're clear behind. Yeah, not bad. But it is immense fun, even for someone like me who's been riding for 15 years and has the option of riding much larger CC bikes. I still love these bikes. And they're an absolutely fantastic tool for a new rider to learn their craft on the road without going too quick. So yeah, it's a good little bike that I very much enjoy riding. It's a very honest thing, it is what it is. I hope that you think this review was fair and honest all the way through. I've tried to cover as much as I possibly can. I know I've been a little bit niggly with a few things, you know, picking bits here and there, but that's important to a review. There's no point me just saying, oh, it's great, it's fantastic, if I don't mention any of the quirks or the nuances of a bike. But of course, don't forget, it's those nuances and those quirks of an individual bike that give it its character. And it has got a character. It's a plucky little bike. It tries, and it's fun. It's good for town and city. It's good to get you about. It's good to give you that first independence. It's a good little bike. Well, there we go. I think that's everything I can say about the SM. I've enjoyed it very much. I strongly advise watching the other videos that I've made on it, you know, having fun in the country roads, having fun in the green lanes, because obviously that shows you a lot more of what this bike is capable of beyond just riding around the local town. But this is part of it too, because the reality is this is how we ride most of the time. And it's got to be good for that. And it is. It's a good, nice, comfy place to be. So yes, if you've enjoyed this video, please do hit that like button. A huge thanks to Sinnis for lending me the bike and being cool about me dropping this one. And also, you know, just being open to letting me honestly review it and give you my true thoughts on it, because I don't hold back. Don't forget there is another video just like this on the XE, and if you skip through the middle bit, you'll get to the on the road part, and that'll be unique to that video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.